Because of the extreme temperatures associated with any arc welding process, you should always be aware of fire hazards. The heat of the welding arc can reach temperatures of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, but the temperature of the arc itself is not generally a fire hazard. The danger of fire actually results from the effects of this intense heat upon your work, and in the form of sparks and molten metals created by the arc. Sparks and spatter can spray up to 35 feet away from the area in which you are welding. A spark which is in contact with flammable material may smolder or burn the material very slowly. You must identify and remove or protect any flammable materials from the welding arc, sparks, and spatter. It is also important to be sure the workplace is not in contact with any flammable, which may burn when heated. Flammable materials, with common examples of each, fall into these categories. Liquid, for example, gasoline, oil, paints and thinners. Solid, wood, cardboard and paper, and gas, acetylene, propane, and hydrogen. Before you start welding, inspect the work area in which you will be welding. Look for flammable substances that could ignite when heated. If you are not sure whether or not a substance in the work area is flammable, no welding or cutting should take place until a responsible person has inspected the area and given approval for the work or the material has been removed or protected. Know where the fire alarms and fire extinguishers are located, and check the gauge on the extinguisher so you don't rely upon one that's empty. If there are no fire extinguishers in the area, make sure that you have access to fire hoses with available water pressure, sand buckets, fire-resistant blankets, or other firefighting equipment. Locate the nearest fire exit in case there is a fire and you have to leave the area. If you're welding within 35 feet or so of flammable materials, you should have a fire watcher to see where your sparks are flying, and to grab an extinguisher or sound the alarm if needed. You and the fire watcher should wait for at least 1/2 hour after all welding is finished to find and put out any smoldering fires that may have resulted from your welding. Watch where the sparks and metals are falling from the welding arc. If there are flammable materials, including fuel or hydraulic lines, in your work area and you can't move your work or the flammable material, put a fire-resistant shield such as a piece of sheet metal or fire-resistant blanket in place over the material. If you are welding in a location which is elevated above the ground or from a ladder, make sure that there are no flammable materials beneath you. Don't forget about other workers who may be in the area, because they probably will not appreciate falling slag or sparks from your work. Particular care must be taken when welding or cutting in dusty locations. Under some conditions, fine dust particles may readily burn and without warning result in a flash fire or even an explosion when exposed to the welding arc or even sparks. Be careful, because dust may mean chemical hazards. Because of the extreme fire and explosion hazards inherent to welding on or around containers and piping that may have combustible materials, such work should be handled only by experienced welders who review and follow the safety practices recommended in the American Welding Society document F4.1, Recommended Safe Practices for the Preparation for Welding and Cutting of Containers and Piping which had held hazardous substances. Special precautions which must be taken when welding upon containers may include filling the container with an inert gas or water. This can create a very dangerous situation if not done properly, and welding upon containers or piping should only be performed by qualified welders who are familiar with and follow procedures in the above American Welding Society document. Do not forget to look for and protect any fuel or hydraulic lines near the arc. Lines which contain a flammable liquid under pressure are particularly dangerous and should be avoided when welding. As with other emergencies that may result from welding accidents, the first rule is don't panic. If the fire is very small, you may be able to use the equipment you have to put it out. However, if the fire is too large, call the fire department immediately. Always sound the fire alarm to warn other workers nearby and shut off your welder. Then, leave the area as quickly as possible. If you are not familiar with how to use the fire extinguisher, you should read the instructions on the extinguisher before welding or cutting. It is a good and inexpensive idea to purchase an extinguisher and try using it so you can become familiar with it. Remember that the spray from any extinguisher should be directed at the base of the fire on the material which is burning, not on the flames above the material. The above are primarily common sense safety precautions which you should already be aware of and use whenever you are arc welding. Your company may have a specific hot work permit program that may require additional precautions and procedures to be followed. Consult your safety coordinator or your supervisor for the appropriate training and certification.